Welcome to We Live It, the LiveAg podcast, your source for livestock market insights, management strategies, and real conversations with those who don't just work in the cattle industry, they live it. Here are your hosts, deCordova and Casey Mabry.
Oh, Lord, we would like to welcome you back. Casey and myself like to welcome you back to We Live It, the LiveAg podcast. We're excited here today. We got a guest on today. We'll introduce you to you here in a minute. Just want to check in with Casey, kind of what you've been up to, where you been, what you been doing, buddy.
Oh man, we're in stock show season here, and we've been busy with that part of it. Markets have been chaotic, so we've been busy with that as well. But man, it's been fun. I mean, obviously, we got a lot of things going on, but it's been a good time. How about yourself?
Purebred well's been wild. We've been traveling on, going to them. We had Stevenson's on the 5th. No, whatever day it was. That's what it's all tangled up. We had Expresses here this past week too. Had Stevenson's a weekend before, and a lot of them in between. It's been pretty wild. This purebred market's on fire too, as well as our market. So, man, it's been fun to go see all these guys that produce these good bulls for us that we get to sell to our producers and our customers, so we can market their cattle. And man, it's been pretty good to see those guys and walk around and shake hands. And like you said, stock show season's in full force. We're getting ready to go to Houston with some steers here in the next couple of weeks. Then we got a county fair the week after that. So it's wide open chasing these kids and chasing this company, so it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, it keeps you pretty busy all the time, doesn't it? Yeah, and you guys are getting ready to sell a bunch of wheat pasture cattle here too, right? Whenever we get on the front end of that.
Yeah. We sold some a couple weeks ago, and then we got a pretty big run coming up here in next week. We'll have a pretty good sale on the 13th of March. That deal will be pretty good. Have a pretty good run of them on there too. So.
Yeah, it sounds like wheat's incredible. So guys are probably dragging their feet to sell them here.
They are, and some of them is waiting on some moisture stuff. That's why they drug their feet. Then some of them are just this market. They don't know when to pull the trigger. They're kind of excited and they don't know how to do it, when to do it.
Yeah, either they sold some early and then they're regretting it and they're wanting to wait for more money, or they heard of some buddies getting more money than them. But yeah, everybody wants to sell later than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to introduce Dennis Metzger. He's one of our reps for LiveAg, and he's also our rep relations and one of our rep managers. He goes around and he interviews between him and CJ and myself. We kind of go around and we talk to these new reps, new people that want to come on as reps. We kind of got a criteria that we look for. Like we said before, we don't want to have the most. We just want to have the best. We're going to be very, very crucial on the guys we do hire. So we're pretty critical on that. And Dennis is one that helps with that. And as we'll talk here through for a little while, kind of what we look at in one, and as far as that goes, and what we expect out of them when they go to selling cattle, for as far as how they write them up, slides, and where they're located and all that. So, Dennis, you want to introduce yourself and kind of give it a little bit of background? I mean, you've got a pretty extensive background in the industry. You've come from a couple different companies, and you've learned a lot on the way. Just kind of give a little bit of your background.
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, yes, I'm Dennis Metzger, and like Ty said, I have quite a past as how it evolved, and I got to this point. It involved both seed stock and long time rep, and even some management of another company. But it's been a good ride to get to this point. So with the seed stock side of it, which I'm still fairly involved in seed stock genetic selection for a lot of my customers, which those customers have also become friends. So my communication with the people that I rep cattle for is year round. It's not just at marketing time, but so it's it's non-traditional from that respect. I think that you're communicating with them on a regular basis, not only about market potential, but also genetic potential. So I had a 12-year run as a regional manager or field rep for the Charolais Association. At the same time, I was also a rep, so kind of a unique way of getting here. But in that getting to this point, you build a lot of relationships and meet a lot of people, and if you pay attention to my travel schedule, it'll kind of make your head spin as to what state I'll be in next, and it's it covers a good many states. So,
Well, as far as your customer base, I mean, they're a very loyal customer base. I mean, that's one thing we build in this industry, and we want to talk a lot about today too. Is our customer base. You said you communicate with them more than on just the day you sell their cattle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's more like a family and a close friend atmosphere here. Where we don't just sell their cattle and move on. So we stay with them. We if we're going by their house, we stop in and visit. If they need bulls, we help them procure their bulls. I mean, that's the relationship that you have with your customer base, right?
You know, some days it feels like you manage everything but their personal relationship and their marriage. I mean,
sometimes we get the marriage calls too.
Sometimes you're the only guy that they can talk to.
Yeah. But no, it's year round and I see a lot of them at bull sales too, and that's where a lot of my acquaintances and these long-term relationships have come from, and you know, we're fortunate to be at a place with a company now that technology is foremost with them, but if we don't have the relationship and put that with it, and like I said, I'm talking to them multiple times a year. You know, I can't predict the market, but I can help manage how they're going to fare in the market. You know, through genetics, through different marketing time frames. You know, delivery dates, value added programs. And value added programs have more than just the icons that we get to put on there. They can be managing delivery day, you know, having cattle kind of squared up a little bit so we can make it so shrinks aren't as big and more efficient, which in turn makes a buyer happier if those cattle are on the road quicker and not stressed out 4, 5, 6 hours in a shipping corral on ship day. So it's managing things besides just what happens on 2 days of their payday.
Yeah, I chuckled a second ago, Dennis, and I just want to make sure everybody's clear. Whenever you said I talk to them more than just right coming up to sale day. I mean, so I've got a client that I would help them buy bulls. So, I mean, believe that or not. And that's a feat in itself, trying to decide what that's going to be for a big operation, you know, because it makes such a long-term impact. And so a lot of those bull sellers would call you, your phone would ring and you're like, I didn't get the bull sale catalog, but you know it's coming like right then and it's like, hey buddy, how you been? You know? And there's so many of those things in this industry, but it takes time to work with these producers, but then also that's the reward that you get from it. Because like you and I were talking just a second ago out there, you live in a totally different area than I do, and we've never really crossed paths until, you know, I'd say in the last year or so. But this industry's so big but so small that whenever you are a resource to somebody, that it just continues to evolve into that.
Well, a lot of times it's, and from my personal experience, I mean, a lot of my new customer base or potential new rep base has come from a delivery. You know, meet a neighbor there that wants to make a switch or likes the way you do things, likes the way his neighbor's cattle had sold that day. He's got the same kind of product. You know, how does he get to be a part of that? So it's big, but it's very, very small when it comes right down to it.
Oh, it's wild.
And, you know, there isn't, especially now in the last several years, but there isn't hardly a week goes by that I don't meet somebody that, you know, you've heard about or know about, or it might even be a new acquaintance that you've never heard the name that evolves into something that you're going to do business down the road or at least communicate. And in your case, you know, whether that be what do you think about the market or you think where we headed, you know, that's the question we all get asked as a company and as reps, you know, well, what's the market going to be like next 2 or 3 years? Well,
yeah.
I said it earlier, I can't predict it. Fundamentally, it's pretty solid right now, but the putting the relationship part of it with the technology, the relationship business will enhance the technology will enhance our company and the relationship part of it, in my opinion.
You also bring a pretty substantial buyer base with you. I mean, that's another thing that we don't talk about a lot is our relationships with these buyers. I mean, they become friends. They become like family. I mean, there's I don't know, 8 or 10 of them I talk to on a daily, if not a weekly basis that we might not even talk about the cattle. They might call and check on the girls, and I'll call and check on their kids, and you know, and a lot of us are in the show world together. That it's just it's such a tight knit group of us guys that that communicate on a daily or weekly basis. And like I said, might not even talk about cattle, but we do a lot of business together. And that's one relationship that we don't talk about a lot is our buyer base. And we're very fortunate to have an awesome buyer base. And you got a pretty big buyer base that follows you around.
Well, and that's come over time too, but that's also relationship driven. And I think a good example of that was in Denver at our sale at Coors Field. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of buyers that were in the room that day that didn't buy cattle, but come to support us, see what we was about, knew somebody involved, whether it was a seller, a rep, or any part of it. I mean, they showed up just to support us and see what we're about. And I think that was a good example for me. I mean, I can think of 3 or 4 people that was there that are buyers that I deal with and that probably all of us deal with, but they were there for support more than anything. That's
it was such a good environment there. It was really cool, and to go in there and see some of those people, and I mean, they could easily sit on the other side of the computer screen and do that, but it's interesting to see them come to the site and watch it and enjoy themselves and eat that good lunch that they had there for sure.
Yep, I didn't get to that point to try.
Lunch. They had lunch.
Oh yeah, you were over there busy.
They served lunch and they didn't let me know.
They sent you the bill though.
I did get the bill, but I never seen the lunch. They sent me pizza the day before.
Yeah, that's what it was, pizza the day before. But those relationships with buyers are just as important. I mean, we work for the seller most of the year until the gavel drops, and then it's all about the buyer.
Yep.
And the sellers that understand that is the best feeling you'll ever get is knowing that you've got a seller that cares as much about that buyer as you do.
Yeah.
And that's what makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about current events and where we're at, the state of the industry and that kind of stuff. You good with that?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna be a little bit selfish in this fact because it's gonna kind of help me to digest a little bit of the bias that I've got as far as the market goes. Dennis, let's talk about the last several years, and really it's about where we've been, where we've come from, and then kind of where we're going. Okay, so and this is where the state of the union for the cowman. You probably got more boots on the ground in that area and lots of different, and not in that area, in lots of areas, and really understanding. So, we've gone through, multiple different things that have driven people to make decisions to either get into the cow business or get out of the cow business. I think about guys that I've talked to, in 2019, 2018, 2020. We always talk about the different things like aging ranchers and what have you, but there's been some financially impactful events that drove people out of the market. One of those being the biggest drought that we've had out west, so the Montana area. And so I've had, just hands-on approaches where I've had, guys that had 4,000 or 5,000 cows liquidate and then not come back. Now, so I'm going to start it with that, is just give me your gut on what the state of the industry is. What's the cow man thinking? Where are they at? Are they retaining? Do they want to retain? Do they want to grow? Are they buying cows from different areas? Just kind of let's download that for a minute.
Well, and I think by, in a 15, 16, 17 state area that I travel in, some of those states a lot more than others, but there's still pretty big difference in moisture. We got the Northwest. It's getting a lot of moisture right now. My home country, which I don't spend much time in, we're desperately in need of moisture. Now, we just sooner wait till April before we get it. But as I travel around in the base that I work with mostly, and the conversations that I have, whether I deliver their cattle or not, there's not much growth going on where I come from. The growth that I see probably happening because of retirement or because of youth and interest rates and those things, and the not a family member to help get them started, support them. That's very minimal right now, but what I see is bigger getting bigger. Buying neighboring ranches, established ranches that have been around 100+ years.
Yeah, like they've got the ranch that they own next door. They just sold a cow crop and they can buy the next ranch.
The people we were talking about right before we walked in this room, they just bought another, $3 million ranch, not a very big deal, but connected to them, and they're in a position where they can do that. For the young guy, and now I do think this market will encourage youth to come back to the ranch because, you start talking the levels we're at, that end of the year income looks lucrative to them versus going to town and getting getting a job that may not be there very long, and if they ever have hopes of coming back to the ranch, we're in a market right now that will encourage them to do that. Now, we all know, and there's obstacles coming. We've all seen it. I mean, it's win is the key, but what I would tell anybody is make sure you're in a position that when that does come, and that's where you come in, is I've mentioned risk management protection more in the last 6 months, 3 months than I've ever said it. Yeah. And it's a non-traditional thing for established ranchers to think about risk protection. Ranchers spend a lot of time, and they're really good at production. They're really good at building a really good product, especially the upper 20 or 30% of these aggressive and progressive ranchers. They spend a lot of time getting that product just right. Marketing is not their forte, and risk management is something that they struggle with.
Yeah, most guys in this business, most guys that you'll find are their personality type's more reserved and more quiet, and they're out on the ranch, and it's a lifestyle. And then whenever you start talking about any of those numbers and the sales side of it, they don't necessarily put a whole lot of time and effort into it. And they really don't have to most of the time, okay? The market usually just kind of takes care of itself most of the time. And then you'll have that 1 year that just smokes them, right? And it takes a lot of years to do that. So it was interesting when I spent just a fraction of time at NCBA convention, but I think about that, over the years of the feeling that you get from people, or you go to sales or you do whatever, and we've just had this, you go from what's the market going to do to everybody high-fiving themselves. Whenever the market was, there's a lot of them cows that got liquidated out of Montana for $800 or $900 a head. And now those cows are worth $3,000 a head or more. And actually they're probably worth more than that based on what the calf values are. But that's where I'm going, all right, I don't know where the market's going to go. And if I told somebody the market was going to go down, I'd probably be wrong, right? But if you told somebody that we're going to hang in here and keep going higher, I just want to know, who's going to be the next participants in this thing? Because the thing that's unfortunate about our business is it's a lifetime aging part of it. It's aging out. And so and the thing about the capital that it takes to get into this business, that's always been a thing. Yep. Ranches, I don't think I've ever heard of a cheap set of feeder cattle. I don't think I've ever heard of a cheap cow or a cheap land. You know what I'm saying? It's always been high. But I just wanted to kind of dialogue with that for a minute.
So as a rep, one of the things, and being in rep relations now or whatever, to help train young guys, that's one thing I've thought a lot about, because we're in a business where a lot of reps are aging out. Not so much here, but I've given a tremendous amount of thought that we train younger guys, because I'm one of them that's aging out. I'm the oldest guy on the team right at the moment, or at least in my part of the world.
You look extremely young. You must take care of yourself.
It's lifting weights, working out.
It looks like Ty's got 20 years on you.
Well, gray-wise, he's at least
easy there, killer.
But that's one thing I've given some. How do we take our company to the next level, and those ranchers that are the 100-year-old ranches that the next generation's there, and I've been at it 20. I evolved into this by accident. I didn't grow up looking for this job.
How'd you get into it?
There was and it was the best guy I've ever worked for. But I went in as a Charolais field man. I went into his office one day to do a Charolais visit. You got to keep track of where you've been. So I go see a man by the name of Ellington Peek one day when I'm traveling through California, and which out there is legendary. And I left with a checkbook, a contract book, and a bill of lading. I went in just to shake his hand and say hi. So
I bet that was pretty fun, but pretty nerve-wracking as well, huh?
Yeah, well, first couple of years, I kind of I forgot where I put it and stored it, But that's the man that taught me what the business is about from a relationship standpoint. I flew on an airplane with him one time from Denver to Phoenix, which is a little over an hour. And I bet before we landed, the stewardess were mad at him because he was walking the aisleway, introducing himself, just shaking hands. He'd met half the people on the plane. But that was a lesson I'll never forget. Now, to put technology with that, then that's kind of and each other. They enhance each other, in my opinion. But I think we need, as a company, you know, there is a good. We hear more about the aging out, and we hear more about the market and the, you know, how's a young guy get started. But as I travel around, I mean, I've got several ranches that were. I'm 3 generations. The 3rd generation's there. And I've been at it 20, 25 years, you know, is all I've been at it. Yeah. So,
well, the cattle, I was going to say the cattle market has got a 10-year cycle to it. And it's crazy because on the beginning of the cycle, you got people that are, you know, telling their kids to get into the business. And by the end of the cycle, they're telling their kids to get out of the business. Yeah. And they're like, I mean, I tell people that all the time. And like, I mean, even in my company, we've tried to hire, I've got a couple guys that we hired straight out of college. And you have to mentor them, and you got to put all the effort into them. And I'd call them $1 million babies because it takes forever to get them there. And that's what Cargill did for me. But if you don't bring people into that industry, then your business dies.
Yeah, the whole industry. I mean, so he said something a while ago that I wanted to circle back around on, talking about the cow-calf guy, the producer. How do they, in a market like this, how can they, and I think I know the answer, but I want you to dive into it a little deeper. How do they protect themselves? How do they not hedge, but maybe LRP or something on a calf crop that's coming up, that's upcoming?
Unborn calf crop.
Unborn calf crop how can they capitalize on this deal? Is there a way for them out there to do that?
Yeah, and I would look at it more so as like, okay, so let's say we have I've got a producer that's got 500 cows, you know, and that cow and that calf that was going to get produced off of that cow, you know, 5 years ago was worth $900. I mean, so this guy's got a revenue of, you know, $500,000 in a year, right? Depending on what his expenses are. I mean, whatever he's going to make. But just look at him. He's a straight up revenue based business. And I think about this is wild how I think about this all the time because most people don't even think about it. They just send their calves off, and that's what they get. What they get. They're just price takers. Now the market is double the value of those calves. All right, so those calves are worth now, just say $2,000, right? So that guy went from having a $500,000 or $450,000 in revenue every year up to $1 million. His expenses have probably gone up to some degree, but not really that much. I mean, they've gone up. They haven't doubled, right?
Right.
But they have gone up. And so I'm not saying the market ever corrects back and gets to where they're worth $900 a head. But how do you, to answer your question on how to protect that? So there's a program called Livestock Risk Protection Insurance. And I'm guessing, I mean, I always make this joke. I mean, Blue Reef, we offer it. We do it because we use it in relationship with futures and options. And we try to be cattle market people. And so that program is an insurance program. It's offered by the Federal Crop Insurance Program by the USDA. And it's a program that's offered to cattle producers, and it's been around for quite a while. The reason why it's been very unpopular to use it is because it's very expensive, or it was very expensive. So what happened during COVID is whenever they took a lot of the funds, the federal government steps back and goes, man, we've never given direct payments to producers before on the livestock side of things outside of drought relief or some kind of, you know, fire or something like that. So what they did is they took a big chunk of that money that was dished out to everybody, and it's the smartest thing they've done. And they fully subsidized LRP and gave a federal crop insurance program, to livestock producers. And now, all of a sudden, it opens up this door to risk management. So futures and options are super complex, right? I mean, we got margin calls, we got brokerage accounts. So anybody that's got less than 500 cows, if they showed up to my doorstep and knocked on my door 5 years ago and said, hey, Casey, help me manage my risk, I'd probably tell them that I can't do anything or it wasn't wise to do anything. Because, I mean, you hear all kinds of stories where some slickback Chicago broker showed up to a ranch and they took their money after the market went up. So how you use the program now, so it's offered by the people that offer it are insurance agents. And so it's you can find your local crop insurance agent, or I mean Blue Reef. If we fit you, you can call up any of our people that we do it. We try to be very focused on straight up LRP or cattle to do so. So it gives you the ability to go out 3 months from now up to a year from now and insure that animal in a different class.
at different levels too, right?
Yeah. So different price levels. Yeah.
Yes.
So different coverage levels. Whether you want to, whether so like let me give you an example of that. Let's say the cattle market's 270 a year from now. That is based off the feeder cattle index for a 750 pound steer that's going into the index. All of it relates to that, so it's cash settled. Whenever you can insure up to 100% of that value, and then down to 20 or 30% of that value. Like so, think about it like you want to insure full value, or you want to insure 50% of the value.
So is it sex tied to? Is steers and heifers together, or they got separate value?
So on fed cattle, it's steers and heifers together because there's really no price disparity on those as far as per hundredweight values go. On the feeder cattle side of things, what they've tried to do to differentiate steers and heifers, and then heavier feeder cattle and lighter feeder or calves, they have basically 4 criteria. So you have steers and heifers above 750 pounds, or I'm sorry, above 600 pounds, and then steers and heifers below 599 pounds. But everything bases off of the index. A steer, so you take the quoted futures price out there, whatever month it is, and the quotes come out every day. But generally speaking, the heifers are a 10% reduction in value of what your coverage price is. And then the lighter weight cattle are an index that's 10% above what the futures price is. So that gets all confusing, but at the end of the day, what I tell people is always look at the feeder board. It doesn't necessarily matter if you got a steer or heifer. It does whenever you go to write the policy and then whenever you go to prove ownership. But outside of that, the price is always going to settle back to the feeder USDA feeder index.
I think the big thing that I share with my customers is I don't know all the ins and outs. That's where you make your living. They get your phone number, and I do encourage them to give it some consideration at the levels that we're at now.
It's
especially if they're answering to a banker, and I think that's part of why we haven't seen heifer retention just explode. Is because there's interest to pay, and you can get rid of a lot of interest right now with the heifer market the way it is.
Just think about a scenario like this. Let's say I'm a guy, I'm 25 years old, and I'm getting out of college, and you go buy a load of cows. I mean, that load of cows, I don't know, I'm probably not that great with math, but let's say that load of cows 5 years ago, if you'd have been a guy that graduated college 5 years ago and you wanted to get in this business, or you're leaving the ranch and you want to get into it, load of cows cost you 5 years ago 35, 40 grand, right? 50 grand. Is that right? Yeah. $1,000 a head or something like that, right? Yeah. And then, I mean, I thought a $1,500 cow 3 or 4 or 5 years ago was crazy high. And now we got these cows that are worth, 3 times that, right?
Yep.
$3 grand. So let's say you go out there and now, so it's not necessarily how high the market can go. It's how it's what's the downside risk? Well, the downside risk, if you put up $500 in your own money to go buy that cow and leverage it, the market's got $1,000 downside. Not potential, but I mean, it could, all right? I mean, it could go down there. But like now you could go buy those cows, do an unborn calf policy on them on the calves that the cows are going to produce, and you could insure the gestating cow's value. So if the market broke and it went down, you'd be able to have a file a claim on that, on the market dropping, and then collect that premium, and thus reducing the cost of your cow, theoretically, if you look at it that way. I mean, those things cost, I would tell you roundabout figures, $70 to $100 a head to insure that calf. Anymore, that's what the interest costs are. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's all sunk. I mean, I look at it like sunk cost. So a lot of these guys that are like starting into this business and doing it and trying to run their business like a business, they're putting it in as just kind of a cost of doing business.
It's like cost of gain.
Yeah.
It's like trucking.
Yeah, or any other insurance. I mean, we don't buy insurance on our house hoping that our house burns down.
Right.
Because that would obviously be way more costly than anything else. So,
but we insure all those things. We insure our car. We insure our house. Why wouldn't we insure what's paying for our house and our car?
Yeah. It's just not traditional to think about it that way. But I would rather guys really learn and dig deep and understand it and do it or have it than step back if something happens. And I'm not saying it ever will, and I never want to. I mean, obviously, but if something happens, and then we're sitting here and have some devastation, and we don't have it. But in the cattle business, that's usually the big thing that we get. I mean, you can insure against drought, with PRF and things like that. But everybody's not necessarily looked at cattle price. We just always, and I say this all the time, Dennis, and some people have laughed at it, but I always say the thing that I hear the most is people say, I hope that this thing stays together. And I always just say, hope's not a strategy. You know, we can do things about it, you know, and I would tell you that's the best thing that's happened in the best thing that came out of COVID, honestly, is the ability for people to manage risk on a smaller scale, because we didn't have that before.
Yeah.
The big guys use the futures market, and that's been, you know.
I find that there's younger guys anyway that's had some education about commodities, commodity brokering. The younger guys I'm finding are using it to a degree, you know, whether it's a put or a call or whatever. And when I say young, 30s, your age, you know, kind of guys.
Well, you're young until you're over 40. We've established that.
We've established that. We're finally.
I'm 44 today, so I mean, it's like.
Yeah, we're finally they're respecting us a little bit.
But the last big
40.
run up in 2014-15, I had a handful of customers that were, you know, 4 or 5 years out of college. They weighed right into $3,000 bred heifers. Guess who won't buy one now? Is that generation, because it took them 10 years to get worked out of that. They were borrowing money, you know, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be afraid of being afraid of an unknown will get you in trouble. But managing to what could be the unknown will be that'll keep you around.
Yeah.
So,
well, Dennis, we appreciate you coming on today. We great segment here. You got anything else you kind of want to ask for some of your customer base or your buyer base as far as we go along here? Or?
I'd like to take this chair with me. It makes me feel tall.
Well, you look extremely tall.
Well, I'm not going to touch that one. So we got that booster seat in Barbara's truck if you need it to take with you. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm very excited about what we got going, and I'm even more excited to be able to enhance what my customers' potential might be through this, particularly from a buyer side of it and their comfort zone with all of it. The seller side, the friend side, they're excited. You know, I've had just nearly 100% positive feedback on it. I've had probably better feedback from buyers, so that have watched and seen what we got going on, and I think give us a chance to make things better for you and the family, and I think it's there's bright days ahead.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you, Casey. Thank you guys for watching and being a part of it. Once again, thanks for watching We Live It, the LiveAg podcast. We want to welcome any industry partners that want to come on. Just go to the LiveAg, live-ag.com. Look up our marketing people there. Katie, look up Katie's website there, email, I guess I should say there. Email her and kind of get in touch with any of us if you want to be a part of it. Any of the industry leaders out there that want to join the podcast, come on and talk over some things. We welcome you to reach out to. We'd love to have you. So once again, thank you, Casey. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.